guests, thanks for being with us. And welcome all those online. Thanks for being with us also. Sorry about the issues we had, some glitches here, but we're back. So we're in a series called The New Normal. And really the heart behind this is saying, everybody's saying, let's go. Why can't we wait till it goes back to normal? And I'm saying, hey, why don't we create a new, better normal than what was in the past and what currently is? All of us would say, all right, the normal we're in, it's not the best, but let's not settle for something that wasn't working before. Let's create something different, something new. And if you're wondering, this is part 8 of a series that we're in. You're thinking, that's like 2 months that we've been in this series. Well, neuroscientists tell us that if you really want to change a thought pattern, it's got to be 3 cycles, because you've heard 21 days habit, right? Well, to change a thought process, it actually takes 3 cycles of that. So it's got to be almost 2 months of you focusing on the same thing over and over to eventually change it. And so Karen Leaf, who's a neuroscientist, she says you got to do this multiple times to be able to identify that thought, because a negative thought, it takes root in a negative habit, it grows, and until you can identify it and begin to work towards that, you actually can change something. And so if you've been practicing since the beginning of New Normal, changing some of these things that have been challenging you, by this point, you'll begin to see some significant change. If you haven't, keep at it, because it's going to take a couple months to be able to actually change that. And a lot of times the reason people don't see significant change is because they give up too soon. So I'm saying don't give up too soon. Let's create a new normal, a better normal, right? Let's help people to move beyond what was and what currently is to do that. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to make the new normal better than the current or the old, we always have to change things. And so we've given you some different things to change. We talked about influences, the things we listen to, the people we listen to, the people in our lives. We've talked to our friends, choose those wisely. Talking about disciplines, some habits, some systems in our lives. We talked about responsibility. And then last week, since Sarah did a great job talking about significance. And she said this, she said, significance is what happens to you, success is what happens to you, but significance is what happens through you. And so if you want to live a life of significance, you have to be able to choose to make a change, make a difference in somebody's life, and use your life intentionally to make a difference. I'm going to kind of continue on this, but with a slight change, but I'll tell you about it in a second. But through this whole series, one of the things that we've been showing is when it comes to Jesus, right? So as a Christian church, we follow Jesus' teachings. And one of the things that he would say, that they recorded him a lot, is he would say, here's the normal, but let me tell you there's a better normal. There's something better you should strive for. So the Gospels are recorded like this. He would say, you've heard it said, but I tell you. And this haven't heard it said, he would say something like, you've heard it said not to murder, right? That's not a bad thing. That normal is actually not a bad thing of not murdering people. But he would say, but I tell you, don't even think negative thoughts toward that person. So he was taking the normal, and he was saying, I have a better normal. Don't even let it start in your thought life, in your heart. Take root, because then that's where the process actually begins, not in the action, but in the intention and in the heart. And throughout the Gospels, he'll say this over and over to challenge the status quo, to challenge what is acceptable, to challenge the normal. And then he would say, let me give you a higher way of looking at things. Let me help you to see something beyond that. And then Paul takes on that same idea, and throughout his writings, he continues on that. And in Romans 12, he says this. He says, don't conform to the normal of this world, to the pattern of this world, right? Don't just go with the flow. Don't just fit in. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So Paul knew something that neuroscientists now know, is that your thoughts actually control your behaviors. Your thoughts actually control your habits. Your thoughts actually impact how you live. And so Paul's saying if you want to have a better life and you accomplish things God wants you to, it has to start with not just going with the normal, not just fitting in, but actually letting God transform your thinking. And so this whole series we've been saying, all right, we have to have some different thoughts in the area of relationships, in the area of taking responsibility, the way we approach life. Because when you're in a situation that's difficult, right, it's up to you what you focus on and what you allow God to transform your thoughts, if you'll become better through that or if you'll become bitter or worse through it. So through COVID, the possibilities for us to do amazing things are in front of us, and the possibilities for us to become upset with everything is also in front of us all the time. Viktor Frankl, he was in the Nazi concentration camps, and he survived and went through it. He wrote these books about purpose of man and about he was a psychiatrist, so he talked about like the psyche and the psychology of us as humans. And he said the greatest ability a human has is to choose for themselves the attitude that they'll have despite what's happening. So he realized in the concentration camps, those that had a positive attitude, those that focused on things they could control, they made it through. And those who didn't focus on those things, they actually are the ones that suffered and died off earlier. And he said it's up to us to be able to choose for ourselves in any given situation, the attitude, the approach, what we'll do in life. And so for this series, for New Normal, I'm saying we have to choose for us the health of our relationships, the health of our finances, our mental and emotional health. All these areas, it's up to us to create these things, even when everything else is going crazy, even when everything else is not working out the way we want it to. It's up to us to be able to choose these things. So we've been telling some stories about normals, right? And so different things. Cesare told about the story about the ham last week. That was pretty good, right? Cutting the edges. She was cooking some fish this week, and the fish was too long. I'm like, just cut off the edges. And she laughed because that was last week's story. So I have a normal that I thought of. So if you get hanging around me enough, you will realize that I'm a pretty positive person. My normal is positivity. Like, I am eternally optimistic about things, right? In fact, we had one of our team members when he was this tall, and the reason I know he's this tall, because this is how tall you have to be to run into the back of a tailgate, okay? He was this tall. He's now going to be a missionary in the Middle East, so it's pretty awesome. But he was running through, we're at their house, and we were hanging out, it's a dinner or something, a party, something. And he was running through, and he hit his head on the tailgate, right? And he's on the ground crying, and I'm right there next to him, and his dad, and we're trying to like, Jared, you okay? And we're talking to him, and finally we lift him up, and I say to Jared, I said, well, Jared, he's like, yeah, he's just hurting. And I said, well, good news, you're getting taller. So, and his parents laugh to this day. They still tease me about that because they're like, only Eric could find something good in the middle of some tragedy of a kid hitting his head on the tailgate, right? But it's my personality. I'm going to try to, in the middle of the worst situations, I'm going to try to find something good. I'm going to try to find something that's beyond that. I'm going to distract. I'm going to get our attention away from the pain and to see something positive, which I said, hey, good news, you're growing up. You're getting taller, so be careful next time you're running around because you're tall enough to hit things with your head, right? That was the point. But if that's my normal. And I don't know about your normal. I don't know if yours is positive, if yours is optimistic, if you're negative. Even that you can change. It's the good news is you can change that. You can become different in the way you approach things. And so our challenge is don't just settle with normal. Don't just go with the flow, whatever you've been raised with. Learn to choose better. Learn to choose and take those lessons and make them better. So today I want to talk about purpose. One of my favorite things to talk about is purpose. So it goes with significance, but if you're going to be significant, you really have to know your purpose. And Cesare talked about this a little bit last week, but I'm going to continue on. So purpose, another word for purpose could just be why. Know your why in life. Know your why in finances. Know your why in marriage. Know your why in parenting. Know your why, like your purpose, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're hoping to see the results at the end of it, your why. Know your why. So one of the best stories that I know to talk about identity, about purpose, is the story of this rabbi. After a long day of teaching and ministry, he's walking home. And as he's walking, he's engaged in prayer. He's thinking about what he taught about. He's thinking about the questions, how he can get better. And in the middle of it, he's praying and talking to God and having a time of prayer. And while he's walking, he gets to this fork in the road. And because he's so in his thoughts and his prayer, he takes the wrong turn. And as he's walking, the sun begins to start setting, and he finds himself in front of this big wooden gate, this big wooden fence. And when he gets there, he realizes, oh, wow, I took the wrong turn somewhere. And he's trying to think, where did I take the wrong turn? How did I get off track? And before he can figure it out, a voice from above says, who are you, and what are you doing here? And the rabbi, he thinks, wow, that is a great question. And he's thinking, as a rabbi, you answer a question with a question. So he's thinking, how do I respond to this? And as he's waiting and taking a long time, the voice from above is a little annoyed and says, a little stronger with authority, who are you and what are you doing here? And the rabbi said, I got it. He says, how much do they pay you to ask that question? And the Roman centurion on top of the fence, he says, 2 denarii a day. Why? And the rabbi says, I will pay you double if you'll come to my house every morning and ask me those 2 questions. Who are you and what are you doing here? See, the rabbi understood the importance of those 2 questions. Because if you can answer these questions consistently on a regular basis and you know the answer to that and you're staying on track, right? Who are you? What are you doing here? You'll actually fulfill and accomplish significant things with your life. And the challenge is when we forget who we are, forget what we're doing here, we tend to chase all these different things in life and we end up on a mountain and we realize it's the wrong mountain. Or we climb a ladder in business and we get to the top and realize the ladder's on the wrong building. I was riding with one of our cycling teammates a couple weeks ago for Bike for Light. He's from Colorado Springs, and so he's had opportunities to engage with a lot of different Olympic athletes because they train there. And he told me these stories about how these athletes spend their whole life chasing this goal, right, of trying to win a medal, trying to be the best in whatever the category, whatever sport they are. And he says a lot of times it's sad is that when they actually win the medal or they do really good, they actually become depressed after because they realize that they spent their whole life climbing this mountain, but it wasn't fulfilling. The medal didn't prove enough for them to have enough purpose in life, that was the purpose. And they realized, like, I spent all my time doing this, but I really neglected other things, and I didn't really want. And what they realized, they got to the top of the mountain, but it wasn't the mountain they would want to be on. But the athletes who had a deeper purpose, a deeper sense of, okay, this is part of my life, but it's not why I exist. There's something more here. Those that have purpose with what they're doing, they actually get to the top and they find it fulfilling because they're actually doing other things with their life, not just chasing a medal. And he's talking about these different things, right? So who we are and what we're doing here is really important. Because if you forget who you are and what you're doing here, you get off track. In fact, we're going to read the life of Jesus in a little bit, but the number one thing the enemy came after Jesus for in the beginning of before he even started his ministry, he said, if you really are the Son of God, he wanted to doubt his identity. The enemy wanted Jesus to doubt who he was, his identity, and he wanted to get him off track. And then even throughout the Gospels, we see people over and over trying to get Jesus off track and try to focus on something else. But Jesus knew who he was, and he understood what he was doing here. He was a strong identity and purpose, sense of purpose. And the reason he did so much in 3 years is because he was focused on his purpose. So we're going to talk a little about that today. But let me show you a diagram. It's called the Golden Circle. So there's a leadership expert named Simon Sinek. Great. He has some great books out there, some great leadership, some great things. He has this TED Talk. It's one of the most watched TED Talks ever. And he talks about the Golden Circle. And essentially the Golden Circle is he talks about how we have these three approaches to life, right? We have the why, the purpose. We have the how, the process. And we have the what, the outcomes or the results. And he says, in our life, if you want to be significant, if you want to have a strong sense of purpose, you have to understand your why. You have to know your why. Essentially, your why is why you get out of bed in the morning. It's your purpose for waking up, right? Unfortunately, most people actually start with the how or the what. They tend to focus on the externals. This is the results I want. I want to make a lot of money. I want to look really good. I want to be popular. I want to whatever. And they focus on the externals, and they neglect the internal of why. And when they get all of these things, they never are fulfilled because they realize that no matter how much money, how good looking you are, whatever, there's always going to be somebody that has more, or you're going to change in time, and it's not fulfilling enough. But the people who start with why, they actually make a greater impact. He uses Martin Luther King as an example. Martin Luther King Jr., he got up and made this speech. It wasn't called, I have a plan for your life. It was called, I have a dream. It was about purpose. I believe people are created, right? That God has created us. He believed something. It was a dream. Not just a plan, it was a dream. And he says the reason he had such a big impact in our world, and if you look throughout history, they had a strong sense of why they were doing what they were doing. Organizations that we love and that we buy a lot from, they have a strong sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Others, they just focus on the cars. They focus on the outside. Most commercials focus here, right? They want you to think that if you can just get something on the outside changed, life's going to be better. I believe that Scripture, it's the opposite. God is always saying if you can fix the inside, the outside will take care of itself. So if you can find your why, the path will actually, you'll actually begin to find out on your own if you can discover your why. Purpose is, it's like a rudder in your life, that no matter the storms that are going on, you can still direct your life around those things to keep moving forward. When you don't have purpose, it's like you have no control, and you have to just go with the storms wherever they take you, whatever happens, whatever people say. So people with a strong sense of why, of purpose, they actually are in control of their lives, and they make better decisions. And those who don't, they just kind of drift, and they find themselves on the different buildings that they never wanted to be on. And they might get a lot of fame and fortune, all that, and they realize that was actually not the most significant thing I could have given my life to. In fact, let me give a chair real fast. 7 years ago, about 6 months leading up to our launch, we would get together in the Hyatt place in their room, and we built a launch team. So many of our team members, still even today that are part of our team, they were part of that launch team. Some moved away other places. Some have gone to different places. But every time we'd meet, about 6 months before we launched, we would meet and we'd gather and we'd talk about the Grove. We'd talk about the heart of the Grove and why we even wanted to start a church in the first place, right? Because most of the time people in the city would say, does Santa Fe really need another church? And the truth is, no, they don't need another church. I mean, we need a lot of churches, but they need specific churches that are going to accomplish specific things. And honestly, because there's so much unchurched people in Santa Fe, yes, we need a lot of churches, But I would just tell them, we don't just need another church. We do need churches that have a specific mission to reach those who aren't being reached. And if we're going to reach people that aren't being reached, we have to do things differently than other people aren't doing. And I would bring a chair up here, and it was always empty, and I would say, guys, when we meet, there's always going to be an empty chair, and I want this to symbolize for us why we're starting the Grove. Because it doesn't matter how much chairs we fill up here, right? There's always going to be room for somebody that's not here yet. And I told them the stats about Santa Fe, right? 96% of our city on a given Sunday won't be in a church. They will not go to church. Now, majority of those people would actually say yes to an invitation if invited. And now, if the church had an environment that was welcoming, that would engage them, they might even come back, but they would go. Now, there's a percentage that will never come, and that we should go to them. But let's do our best to try to create space. And so I said, we can't forget that we're creating the Grove for the empty chair, the people who aren't here yet. So no matter how many people do come, no matter how many people we reach, there's still going to be thousands of people in our city that don't know that God loves them, don't have a relationship. And we say, this is our why. And I draw this circle, and if you turn it sideways, it's actually a funnel also. And I would say we can't forget this, right? What we do and how we do is important, but the why is why we exist. We exist to reach people, to lead them into a relationship with Christ. We exist to help people find out their purpose and to discover why God created them. And so we'd write the circle, and then we'd write these words that would attach to it, right? And we talk about who we want to be as a church, what we want to be known for. And we talk about strategy. That's important, but it was always saying we exist to reach those who aren't reached yet, those that are unchurched, those that are far from God. Some of those are going to have bad experiences with the church. They don't want to come. Let's not build walls. Let's build bridges to them. Let's figure out ways to help them get engaged. If you wonder why our room is dark, or in the theater we kept it dark, because we want people that aren't comfortable, that are new guests, we want them to feel like they can blend in. They can just sit and enjoy a service without being kind of highlighted or pointed out. Notice how we never say, hey, if this is your first time, would you stand up? Everybody, let's say hello to them. Because some people love that, but most people don't. They're like, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be stand out. I just want to hide. It's intentional. We want our guests to say, hey, just come and enjoy. We're not going to we're not going to embarrass you. We're not going to do anything that's going to create a weird atmosphere. We're glad you're here. So we said we're going to be intentional with everything we do, with the time of our services, right? I grew up where services were really, really long. And the longer the service and the more songs you sang, the greater the experience. It was more like spiritual in the sense, right? And for me, I'm like, that's great for somebody that has a relationship, that grew up that way, that already understands church. But for somebody that doesn't, they're going to come once and be like, 3 hours? Whew, I think I'll come back next year, all right? We want them to look and say, wow, hour and 5 minutes? An hour and 10 minutes? Huh, that was enjoyable. I laughed. That was kind of fun, They had some good coffee, and at the theater we had some good donuts, right? I enjoyed it. We want to create this atmosphere. And we said, guys, we're starting because we want to know why we do what we do, right? Let me show you an example of when you know your why, it changes how you approach things. So would you watch this screen for me?
You're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow.
That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying?
All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found. Was blind, but now
Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So when you know your why, you make a bigger difference with your life. Imagine going to work. You know the what, you do it. Amazing grace, how great. This is great, work, work, work. But when you know your why and you go there because you're making an impact, everybody knows because you're a different employee, you're a different husband, you're a different wife, you're a different student because you understand your purpose, right? Your why. So for us, we said, guys, when we start this Grove, what we do is not as important as why we do it. And that'll impact our how, and it'll even impact our what. Let's be intentional. For 7 years, we've tried our best to stay on that path of saying, this is why we exist. This is why we exist. In fact, I'm so comfortable with it that there'll be times people will come from other cities, from other churches, and they come and they say, man, we like your church, but we wish worship was longer. We wish you would do this or this or this. I'm like, man, I'm glad you like that about church. There's a church down the road that does exactly that. You should probably go to that church because they're going to help you be passionate about your walk with God. For us, we're a little unique. We're different. Now, if you want to join us in our mission to reach people, why we do it, come and join us. And don't try to change us because this is who we are. And we actually do empower people to find the places they belong. And so for us, we're saying, let's stay focused on who we are, why we do what we do. So there's a couple of things. If you're ever trying to figure out your purpose, there's 3 questions you should ask yourself if you want to discover this. One is what makes you cry. The second one is what makes you sing. And then what do you dream about? If you want to discover your purpose, because I believe every single one of us has a purpose. And when you discover that purpose, you actually become an 8, 9, and 10, and sometimes in some cases, in your life, in that area, because you were designed for that. So what makes you cry? What are the things that disturb you, right? That break your heart so much that you're motivated to do something about it? What makes you cry? If you can answer that question, it'll point towards your purpose in life. What makes you sing? What are those things that you smile about, right? What brings joy to your life whenever you're a part of it? So could it be an indication of part of your purpose? When you serve others, when you do something for somebody else, and it brings fulfillment, it's part of your purpose. What do you dream about? It's the what if question. If you had all the resources and all the time and all the things you can do, what would you do with your life? And if you don't have all those yet, what could you do to start working towards those things? We'll talk about those a little more in a while. But essentially, those are the questions to discover your purpose. So for me, for Jesus, as a Jesus follower, I like to look to his example and to see what he talked about when it came to purpose, when it came to life. Mark, the Gospel of Mark, it's the shortest gospel, and Mark is all about action. He's kind of like, let's just get to the point, boom, 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 boom. And if you start reading it, it's kind of like just one after the other of all the action, all the things that Jesus accomplished. But the great thing about Mark is he's always pointing out whenever there's something that takes place, he'll highlight Jesus saying something that's going to show the bigger picture in life, and especially in that moment. So I'll give you an example. So in the first chapter of Mark, right, he opens up with a short little paragraph of John the Baptist, who's going to build a bridge from the Old Testament to the New Testament. He's going to build a bridge to Jesus. And then he goes into the life of Jesus. Jesus goes into the desert and is tempted by the enemy. The enemy says, who are you? What are you doing here, right? Like, are you really the Son of God? And prove it, right? Prove it by what you do. Focus on these things. And then he goes into this right away into Jesus calling his disciples to follow him. And this is where we'll pick it up. In Mark 1:16, he says, as Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, that would be Peter eventually, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. So Simon and Andrew are brothers, and what are they? They're fishermen. This is their livelihood. This is what they've grown up doing, fishing, right? So they go out and they cast their net, and it's about survival. It's about living. It's about making a living. That's what they've known growing up. And he comes and he says this. He says, come and follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for what? People. So another translation says, I'll make you fishers of men. So you've been fishers of fish. Now I'm going to make you fishers of men. And at once they left their nets and they followed him. So Jesus is saying, essentially, when you follow me, this is what a Christian means. It means a Christ follower, right? It means somebody is Christ-like, somebody is following his example. So he says, come and follow me. I'll be your teacher. And I'm going to send you out, and you're going to fish for people. So off the bat, the very first thing he says, if you follow me as your leader, your call will now not be survival, not be providing for your family. It's now going to be focused on people. So my call to you is to come and follow me, and I'm going to teach you how to do what I do, and that's to care for people. And this is the call that he calls his disciples to do. So then it goes on, and right after this story, it jumps into the next thing. Jesus goes to Capernaum. He begins to teach in synagogues. People are amazed at his teachings. They say, man, this is somebody who teaches with authority, not like our Bible teachers now, but there's something in his words. And then he casts out a spirit of a man that was in the crowd, and the people were amazed, right? Like, what is this? Even the unclean spirits obey him. And it says that his reputation, right, the news about him began to spread all around the area of Galilee. And it says to a point that after this happened, the whole town gathered at the door, it says. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. So he's trying not to let his reputation get too big so it overwhelms so he can't accomplish his purposes. Like, he was so aware of his impact that he was saying, we got to stay focused because it's possible the crowds will actually deter and take away from what I'm supposed to accomplish. And so it says that when this happened, right, that they came and they showed up, and he heals Simon Peter's mother-in-law, and does a miracle there. And that evening, after sunset, they brought all the sick and people that were possessed. And then the next day, it says very early in the morning, so that happens all night. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, he left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. All the Gospels make this, they highlight this habit that Jesus had. Whenever, especially when he was really busy in ministry, he did this. Early, before everybody else was up, before people were stirring, he would go off to a solitary place and he would pray. This was Jesus' rhythm. This was his habit. I believe the reason is because he was getting refocused on who he was and what he was doing there. And if you read the story of Jesus, there's times where he'll, in a specific day, he has a mission that he's supposed to accomplish that day. There's somebody he's supposed to meet. There's somebody he's supposed to talk with. There's somebody he's supposed to heal. Even sometimes in the stories, it would say that he would go and he prayed for a man who was paralyzed. And on the way to this man, there's a big crowd of paralyzed people are by this pool. He steps over all these people and says, hey, do you want to be healed? And the guy says, yes, please, I do. And he heals him. And the guy gets up. And then he steps over all the people that are still paralyzed and goes on to the next mission. Kind of like, well, do you just care about those people? No, he does care about those people. But there was a specific thing he was supposed to accomplish that day for a specific reason. I believe it's because of this. He had a discipline of seeking God, of praying, of saying, get me refocused, right? How many do this? This is why I think Sundays are so important. Helps us refocus for the week. This is why discipline of reading your Bible and prayer is really important, because it helps you refocus for the day. Helps you to focus on who you are and what you're doing here. If you don't know that, God wants to help you discover that, who you are and what you're doing there. We'll talk more about that. So it says he went off and prayed. And then as soon as Simon and them get up, it says that him and his companions went to look for Jesus. And when they found him, they exclaimed, Jesus, everyone is looking for you. And in Peter's mind, this is the greatest thing, right? Because he's now a part of the team that is like the A team. It's like everybody wants to see this awesome guy who can heal people and cast out demons. It's like we're popular, right? Everybody. And he says, everyone is looking for you. And Jesus replies, he says, let us go somewhere else to the nearby village so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So Jesus says, Peter, wait, time out. I know you're excited about the crowds. I know everybody's coming. It's about popularity. But wait. We need to go somewhere else now, because I've come to share with a lot of people. I've come to, is not just to be popular. It's not just to call a crowd together so they can listen to us. It's about making an impact in people's lives. And he says this is why I've come. I believe in his time with God, his prayer time, God says, all right, it's time to go to the next city. The cities that you've done, the work you're supposed to do here. We'll continue on with the people after you, and we'll come back at some point. But let's go to the next city. Let's go on to the next place. And the reason I know this is because the exact next sentence that Mark says is this. He says, a man with leprosy came to him. So remember, he says, I'm going to make you a fisher of what? Of people, right? And a person comes to him, a man with leprosy comes to him and begs him on his knees, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And it says that Jesus was indignant. Another translation would say he was filled with compassion. There was something that stirred him that said, this is not right. I'm going to help this person who is an outcast of society. And he reaches out his hand and he touches the man. And he says, I am willing, be clean. And the man is immediately, leprosy left him and he was cleansed and he was made whole. I don't think this is an accident. The story right after, Peter saying, hey, the crowds are here. Mark says, then Jesus went to a specific person, a single individual. So I think that the message that God is sending in this, there's Jesus, he's saying, I'm not just about the crowds, I'm about the individual, I'm about the person. Even in the Old Testament, if you read the story of Numbers, right, there's name after name after name after name after name. People are like, man, you read chapters of names who had names after this kid, and he had this kid, and this kid had this kid. Why is there so many names in there? And for you, the name doesn't mean a lot because it's not you. But for the person that is named, it's like, I'm in the story. I think God's heart is saying the individual matters to me. You matter to me. The people that nobody else looks for and cares about, they matter to him. It's not just about the crowd. It's about the individual that's still not here. It's about the individual that's the outcast. It's about the individual that's far from God, the one that's hurting, the one that's broken. And as much fun as we have here, we can't forget about those people also. I think that's the message Jesus is sending in this story, is I'm going to teach you how to care for people. And it's not always about popularity. Sometimes it's about the individual that nobody else sees. Let's go and win those people, right? So here's on to three things. There is a person at the end of every assignment that you have. So your assignment, maybe that's the workplace. Maybe that's you're parenting some kids. Maybe that's your marriage. Maybe it's school. Like you're going to have a lot of different assignments through life. And it's not an accident that you are where you are. The place you work, the family you're in, the school you're in, the neighborhood you're in, that is an assignment. And honestly, your assignment is always going to have a person attached to it. The question you have to ask is, all right, God, why did you put me here? For what purposes? What am I supposed to accomplish? What am I supposed to do? So for me as a parent, my number one prayer is, God, give me the wisdom to help raise my kids to know you and know your purposes. If anything else, I don't want to be known as the cool dad. I don't want to be known as the rich dad. I want to be known as the fun dad. I want to be known as the person who helped my kids to know their purposes in life, that I would lead them in that journey, right? That's my person. My assignment is those are my people, right? In my marriage, in my neighborhood. It's not an accident where God has you. So for you, you might be like, well, I'm at work. I don't really talk to anybody. I'm just there for a paycheck. Well, if the assignment is your paycheck, good news is that paycheck has the potential to impact a lot of people. You know, we as a church have been feeding kids in Haiti for the last five years, about four years. Hundreds of kids have been fed from our church, from individuals. It costs $10 a month to get a kid food for the whole month. And they feed them at school. And on the weekends, they send home a backpack with food. So they're getting food over the weekends also. And the strategy of Feed One is they understand that if the kid doesn't have an incentive to go to school, they'll be rummaging and looking for work and providing for their family. But if they have a reason, parents will say, you need to go to school. There's food. You're bringing food home. This is a good thing. So for $10 a month. So if your paycheck is the only thing that you think my assignment is just a paycheck, well, then use your paycheck to make an impact in this world. I'm pretty sure that every one of us could figure out a way to save $10, give $10 to help a kid, right, somewhere around the world through Feed One. Or if you have a bigger heart than that, you know, $38 for Compassion International, you can sponsor a kid. They get education, they get food, they get clothes. You get a relationship with this kid that you can begin to write back and forth, right? There's different ways that if your assignment is just a paycheck, well then maybe in that paycheck, there is purpose for you to make an impact in somebody's life. Don't just make it about you, right? Don't make the person you. Because if the person is you on every assignment, you're not going to be fulfilled. You'll always be disappointed because at the end of it, you're going to just look for the next assignment to give you more, another fix, another hit, another feel-good thing. But if your assignment is other people, you begin to wake up with purpose, saying, who exactly is it today that I'm going to impact? And how could I maybe help them on this journey? What can I do to encourage them and help them? The second thing is there's a person at the end of every gift or talent that you have. So whatever your gift and talents are, there's a person. You might be able to do something musically. You might think, well, I'm just playing, whatever. No, maybe there's a person you can mentor and teach. One of our cyclists that we worked with from Colorado, he's a wrestling coach. He does some different things. But one of the things he uses in his groups is he actually teaches kids to cycle. He says, it's amazing. I'll go with some of these students, and we'll go cycle down the road, and we'll just ride bikes, and we'll talk. He's like, they think like I'm teaching them how to cycle. I'm teaching these skills. But he says, really, I'm building relationships. I can share Christ with them. He says, I have sometimes hours at a time with a student just being able to do this, right? He's using a talent that he has to be able to impact a person's life. This same person, we were every opportunity, every assignment matters, right? So on the last day, we're about halfway through the day, and I come next to this rider, and our group passes him, and I kind of pull back and let the group keep going, and he's kind of alone, and I'm just, hey, how you doing? He says, man, my knees are hurting, my body's hurting, I don't know if I can finish this, and he just says, I'm just really struggling. And so I just come next to him, and I put my hand, I say a prayer. And then I leave my hand there, and we're just kind of cruising for a little while. I'm just encouraging him. And kind of just giving us some support because his legs are hurting, and we just go for a little while, and maybe just a couple minutes. It wasn't, for me, it didn't seem like a big deal. But later that night, as we finished, he came up to me, he says, Eric, thank you so much for coming next to me when he did. He says, in my mind, I already made the decision that I was done, my body hurt too much, and I would just get in the van and finish the rest of the day in the van. Like I was spent, I was done. And when you came along and you prayed for me and you encouraged me, something in me says, I'm almost done. Let's just keep going. Let's not give up. And he said, I just want you to know, your little thing there, it made a difference in my life, and I just appreciate it so much. For me, it wasn't very significant, but for him, it was huge. That might have been my assignment for that day, just to encourage somebody, to say, you can keep doing this. What if in your life there's somebody that wants to give up in marriage, give up in school, give up in life, and your assignment is to come alongside them and say, hey, I know you're struggling. I know it's hard, but keep going. Your breakthrough is just around the corner. Don't give up now. Just keep going. There's going to be better ahead. Don't stop. And your words might actually carry them through difficulty, and they can actually make it through. So every person is at the end of opportunities, at the end of our gifts and talents, at the end of assignments, and there's a person at the end of every opportunity. So in your life, you might think like, I'm seated next to this person, on the bus, on the train, or whatever. It's not an accident. Like they're there for a reason. One of our team members from Santa Fe from theGrove, he was roomed with a guy, and I don't know if this happened. I think he's the only person this happened to, because usually you get roomed with different people at different times. He was with the same person every day of the 5 days. Completely different stories, completely different people. But in this journey, one of the guys, he was struggling with some family stuff, and in their conversations, our Grove team member was able to encourage him and speak into him. And they built this relationship. And honestly, it's almost like God paired these two up for this week to be able to make sure that our friend from the south was going to continue on and not give up. It was awesome. It wasn't an accident. That opportunity, it was providential. It was providence. God set it up. And we have to believe in our lives that God he has a story he's writing, he has something he's doing, that it's not an accident that we are in the moment we are in. It's not an accident that we have these things that come in front of us when they come in front of us. There's a person at the end of every opportunity. So it's up to us to say, all right, who's that person? And please, please, please don't make it about you, the person, because unfortunately, a lot of times in our culture, the person is us. It's a selfish nature, selfish way of living, right? It's what happens when we look for those a feel-good moment, right? We work for something. We try to bring pleasure to our life, but as soon as it's over, then we're just back to work on the next pleasure, the next hit, the next fix, right? And the cycle just continues for people, and they live in this continual cycle of selfishness of just, I just want to make it to the next thing that's going to help numb my pain. And honestly, the way you break through is you actually focus on other people. There's a story of a man who had tinnitus and ringing in his ears, and he said it was so unbearable that he got to a point he just wanted to end his life. And finally, one of the doctors who also had tinnitus said, you know what, let me just tell you a little secret. As long as you focus on your pain and what you're going through, it will be unbearable and you'll want to end it. But if you'll use your life to impact others, somehow you'll get the ability to endure the difficulties. And sure enough, this man said he began to focus his life on serving others. And he says it changed the way that the hurting that would go on in his mind because of the tinnitus in his ears. And he said he made it about other people, and all of a sudden he began to live with purpose. And he'd wake up and say, I'm not going to focus on the pain, I'm going to focus on the opportunity that's in front of me. And he began to do that. So in your life, who is that person? Who are those people that you can use opportunities and your talents, your gifts, your assignments to impact? So Jesus was very, very clear on this. In Mark 2, the second chapter of Mark, it says another story. It says when the teachers of the law, who were the Pharisees, saw Jesus eating with sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, why, right? Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said to them, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but it's the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but I've come to call the sinner. It's not the healthy, it's the sick who need it. It's not the people that have already been reached that need the church, it's the ones that haven't been reached that need the church. We together work to make an impact. Jesus understood his why. And he says, I've come for these people. I've come for those that are disconnected, those that are far from God, those that are lost and need help. That was his heart. John 10:10, he records Jesus saying this, that a thief's purpose, the enemy's purpose, to kill, steal, and destroy. But my purpose is to give life in all its fullness. My purpose is to give life and life to the full. My purpose is to help people understand and experience the best life they could possibly live on the earth. Jesus understood his purpose. He understood his why. And that's why in 3 years, he was able to train 12 guys to go. And the way that Acts writes it, the book of Acts, is they turned the world upside down. These disciples that he mentored. In 3 years, he could do, because he was so focused. Can you imagine intentionality every single day you're living saying, I'm going to make an impact today. I'm going to reach somebody. I'm going to heal somebody. I'm going to pray for somebody. I'm going to do something. I'm going to teach somebody something every single day. I think if we did that on a consistent basis in just a couple of years, we could have a huge impact in our world. Not just our city, but our whole world. How do I know this? Because that's what Jesus did. My purpose, my purpose, my purpose. This is why I exist. This is why I've come. This is why I left heaven, the comfort of heaven, to come down to earth to show people a better way. So for you, for those questions, what makes you cry? What things in this world bother you so much? Maybe it's an indication that you're supposed to do something about it. I meet a lot of people say, you know what, that's not right. You should do something about that. I'm like, me? I'm already doing a lot of stuff about some of this stuff. Why don't you go do something about that, right? We have to say what bothers us to the point that we're going to do something about it. What makes you smile? What makes you sing? What are those things in your life that just brings energy to you? Go and help people. Go do something that's going to make you feel. And then what do you dream about? What are those things that if you could do anything, what would you do? And instead of waiting for the moment to do it, start doing something today to build towards that. Don't wait. Just start doing something. So for me, a few things that when it comes to my purpose and when I think of what I'm trying to accomplish, there's these different parts of my life where these questions were answered for me, right? Things that bothered me enough that I want to do something about it. I would go on missions trips. All of my teenage years, I was able to go to different countries on these short-term missions trips. And I would go and I'd meet and see and experience some of the poorest areas of the world. And there was something in my heart that just stirred up this compassion that says, this is not right. We should do something about this. And from that time on, I've always looked for opportunities as a church, but as individuals, to do something about those things. And we've invested and done that. When I was 11 years old, what makes me sing? When I was 11 years old, there was a kid speaker at our camp. And I remember being at this camp, and he told Bible stories. He told these other stories that would teach lessons. And he made me cry. He made me laugh. And he made me just, something come alive in me. And I remember at the end of the camp, after 5 days, at the end, I almost had this sense like God tapped me on the shoulder and said, Eric, I want you to do this with your life. Because I was young, I thought he wanted me to be like a kid's evangelist teacher, right? And so I started, when I first started ministry, that's what I did. I did kids ministry. But as I kind of developed and began to grow my leadership things, I realized what he was saying is, Eric, I want you to do that same thing for others, whether they're old, young, or whatever. Just use your life, your voice, to help connect people to the story that I'm telling. Make them cry, make them laugh, make them see something they've never seen before. And so at a young age, I caught this, and I said, this is what's going to make me come alive, is helping connect people to God, to Christ. And there's something there. When I dream about making an impact with our world, in our world, through our church, through me individually. So what do I do about that? I'm saying I don't have all the resources, I don't have all the time, but I'm going to do what I can when I can. So we made a commitment at church to plant other churches. We've given a lot of resources and money towards that. I have a goal for us. I was hoping that in the first 10 years, we'll be able to help plant 100 churches. I thought that'd be an awesome goal. Up to this point, we've as a church, have coached, have financially given towards about 27 church plants already. And so we still have a few more years. We got to catch up and do some more work, but we do that. Next month, I'm going to go to Austin. I'm going to coach maybe 3 or 4 church planters, right? And we're going to do this on a regular basis. We're just committed to it. So we resource, we give, we encourage, we speak life, because I dream of making an impact. If the Grove can do a little bit, imagine what another 100 Groves could do in 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. And so we say, let's multiply. Let's do something beyond what we can do. And throughout my life, these questions have always kind of been like, man, indication there. Those things that bother you, do something about it. Those things that really make you come alive, do something about it. Those things you dream about, don't wait, do something about it now. And our church for 7 years has been doing things, which is awesome. We feed kids in Haiti. We've helped start a lot of churches. We're supporting missionaries in different parts of the world. We're encouraging people. We're building relationships. Even for the last 7 years, I've worked really hard. Our church has worked hard at building relationships with other churches in our city, because we know we're not alone. We're together. You know, we're the family of God. We're one tribe. We do things a little differently, but we're so grateful for them, and so we're building bridges. Well, 7 years ago, before we started the Grove, I have a friend that I grew up in school with, and he's a businessman. He started a business, a successful business here in Santa Fe. And we had one time he came to the house. He says, "Hey, how do you think it's going?" You know, we're talking about the church plant, and he says, "That's really interesting. How do you start a church?" Like, he was just curious, right? He started a business. He wanted to know how we started a church. So we sat and talked about strategy. We talked about, the plans we had and stuff. And at the end of it, he says, "Can I give you some advice?" And I said, "Sure. Let me get a notebook. I want to write this down." So I went and got my notebook. And as we're sitting there, he says, "Okay, Eric, if you're going to start a church, number one, don't suck." I was like, okay, don't suck. Good, I got that, right? And he said what he meant by that is, if you're going to start, do something like with quality, do something good. And he said, in fact, he says, "Can we laugh in your church? Would that be okay?" I'm like, "Don't suck, make us laugh." Okay, this is a good start. And he says, "Can you make it fun for my kids?" He says, "I grew up in church, and one of the reasons I don't like church is because it wasn't fun. I would go and it didn't make any impact." He says, "Would you make it fun for my kids? Because when I take them, I force them, and they don't ever want to go back. Can you make it fun?" And I told him, "You're going to love our church, because that's our strategy." And what's interesting about what he said was, when we were talking about starting a church in Santa Fe, if you go to the next picture for me, we have this great aspen grove up in the mountain, right? In fact, Aspen Vista right now, the leaves will start changing from now until the end of October. It's just beautiful, right? So thousands of people go and walk this, and they see this. And so we're talking about names for the church. And I remember Sincere and I we were getting ready. We did some trainings to plant a church, and we're talking about names. We didn't have a name. We had a date. We had some things like that, but we just weren't certain. So we're talking about names. And she's like, and I kept saying, "We should be something with Aspen. I want something like Aspen Grove, Aspen Church." She's like, no, Aspen's so overused. Everybody uses Aspen. It's not good. And I'm like, "No, I think I really want it." And she was like, "Why?" And I said, well, I said, in Aspen Grove, I said, the grove of an aspen is like the world's largest living organism. It's awesome. And I said, in fact, in Utah, they actually have documented that's the largest living organism in the world, because it's so intertwined, right, in the side of a mountain. And I began to tell her about an aspen grove. I said, it's awesome. They're interconnected, so all their roots are underneath. If a fire comes and destroys them, pretty quickly they'll regenerate, because the roots aren't burnt, just the tops are, right? So the way that they're built, if in an aspen grove, if there's multiple generations, they can withstand a lot of the different bugs and the different droughts that come. But if there's an aspen grove of only one age, they die off pretty quickly. And I said, it's the picture of the church. We have to have old and young together and working together and challenging each other and teaching each other. We have to be interconnected through small groups. We can't be alone. And if you plant one aspen tree by itself, it usually doesn't do good. It dies. But if you plant it in a group of trees, they eventually connect roots, and they support each other and they help each other. And she's like, "That's pretty cool, the grove." And I'm like, "Yeah, see, the aspen grove." She's like, No, just the grove. And I'm like, "All right, good enough. Let's do it." So it's a picture of what the church is supposed to be, that we support each other. And when my friend says, "Eric, don't suck," we later discovered that a new aspen tree is called a suckling. So when a brand new aspen comes, so he says, "Don't suck." It's a suckling, right? So when a brand new little baby tree is born, a suckling, it has to suck from the others. It has to suck from the mother trees and from the community. And we understand as a baby, it's okay. And I thought, as a church community, that's a perfect picture, because when you first come to Christ, you're kind of like a baby in the faith, right? You need milk and you need some nourishment. You need people to kind of encourage you. But as you grow, there's a point that you no longer are called a suckling, but now you're called to give your life to others. And if you really connect and understand the purpose of it, you actually now begin to produce other trees. You begin to help others to connect. So we have these conversations in our small groups. We have these conversations in the messages where we get to a point where we say, "Okay, the milk has been good, the baby food has been good, but here's a knife, here's a fork. Let me teach you where some good steak is. Let me teach you how to make a steak." And we actually teach you to begin to feed yourself, because at some point you have to grow up and mature and no longer suck. And then when I was thinking about the church community, he was saying, "Don't suck." I thought, our city needs people who are going to give life to the city, not just take from it. So when I meet we built relationships with different nonprofits and different organizations, different churches, different leaders within our city. We're trying to build bridges. Why? Because we're saying, what can we do to serve you? How can we help you? In fact, I met with one of the leaders of our city this last week, and they're going to bring 20 Afghanistan refugee families to Santa Fe. And he says, "Hey, if your church or other churches might be willing to maybe help with some of these families, we'd love to be able to connect with some people in our city to help that process." And he gave me some names of people and stuff. So if that's you, if one of those things that makes you cry is refugees, things like that, you want to be part of that, we'd love to talk and say, "Hey, how can we maybe adopt one of these families as a church and just help them process and work?" Can you imagine being uprooted from your culture, put into this crazy culture that's completely different than yours, right? And trying to figure out how to move forward? So he just said, can we do this? So we're building bridges. So my answer is yes, I'm going to reach out to some pastors and let's see what we can do to help those that are coming our way. What can we do? It's an opportunity, right? It's an assignment that's in front of us. So we said, for us, we can't be a church that sucks. We have to be a church that gives life. In fact, in the Golden Circle, we began to write words. And one of the words that I wrote was altruistic. I know it's like a complicated word nobody uses. But essentially, altruistic just means that you don't live for yourself. You live to give to others. Your life makes an impact on others. Aspen trees are altruistic. So when another tree is struggling, they're sick, it gives it nourishment. It shares. Pretty awesome how the community of Aspens work. So we came up with this word, life-giving. That's the best way to explain altruistic is you're just a life-giving person. That you come into a situation and people leave like they've been given life. So when I teach on Sundays, my heart is to add value to you, to give life, right? So I do try to tell stories, but it's not just as an antidote. It's to help give you a resource and a tool so you can take it with you and help others. My kids were talking about photography yesterday. They're having this competition who could take the best picture. And I said, hey, do you remember a couple of weeks ago I talked about the story about photography? The professor taught photography. And one of my kids says, yeah, it was quantity over quality. And I said, exactly. And I said, keep taking a lot of pictures because that's the best way you'll learn is not just focus on the perfect one, but on trying to discover how to be creative, right? And the point I was making is even in the stories I tell is trying to build bridges to the unchurched, right? I'm talking about neuroscience. Why? Because people that aren't Jesus followers or Christians, the Bible doesn't mean what it means to them to what it means to us. So we have to find things that mean something to them that connect the dots. And when we say neuroscientists discovered our brains, but the Bible's been saying this for thousands of years, it's like, wow, God actually created us this way, and it's been telling us this whole time, and now science finally caught up. Like, yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I give ways to connect the dots and build bridges, right? Because we want to be life-giving. We want to add value. For me, a couple of gifts God's given me is leadership. He's given me the ability to add value through encouraging. Like even my love language is words of affirmation. Like he's giving me the ability to use things to build others up and to help others, right? So for me, I understand people matter. I'm a bridge builder and I'm a multiplier. So I use opportunities in my life to say, how can I push? How can I encourage? And I get a lot of flack for it because I'm always telling people to do something they've never done. I'm trying to, even when it comes to food, like try some food you never tried. This thing's amazing. And then they hate it. And I'm like, well, hey, at least you tried. Now go on to the next one, right? But just don't miss out in life because you're afraid to try something. Just go and do it. You might not be good at it, but you won't know that until you try it a few times. And who knows? You might discover that's a passion of your life. And for me, I'm just trying to encourage. I'm trying to add value. I want to be a life-giving person that when people leave, they say, wow, he's not a vampire. He didn't suck my energy. He didn't suck all my time. Man, I leave encouraged. I leave like he believes in me. I leave like there's more. I can move forward. So for us at church, this is what we want to be, right? We want to be life-giving. We want to look for opportunities to say there's a person at every assignment, on the other side of every assignment. There's a person at the end of every talent we have. There's a person at every opportunity that's in front of us. Let's be like Jesus and start off by saying, okay, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? In fact, here's my challenge for you today, all right? Would you write down your purpose for this week, just for this week? And then would you begin to work on a life purpose statement where you would say, here is what I'm trying to accomplish. For me, I want to add value to every single person. If they're Christian, if they're non-Christian, if they believe something completely different, my purpose is to add value to them. Ultimately, they will see something in me that is different, and ultimately they'll meet Jesus, but it's going to add value no matter what. I want to add value to people, right? So what is your purpose that you're living out? What are the opportunities that you're looking for? Write it down. What is your purpose this week? And I would actually say write it on a note card or on a sticky, put it somewhere you can see it, and then every day you'd say, am I living my purpose out this week? What is that purpose? Am I living it out in my relationships, in my work? And it's kind of like, and what will happen is, if you can just imagine with me, the end of this week, we came back next Sunday after 7 days, and I would ask you the question, so did you live it out every single day? And if you would say yes, can you imagine the impact you would have in 1 week? Think about it. Just you individually, the impact you'd have. The encouragement you'd be able to share with others. How much better you do in school when you know your why you're there. Because it's easy to forget, right? Who are you? Well, I'm a student. Why am I here? It's to build for the future, not just to get a grade. It's to learn something that's going to help me accomplish something that God's given me. And what if that day your teacher's saying something that's going to inspire something for you to actually accomplish something when you're older? And you miss it because you're not engaged. What if your purpose was, all right, I'm going to be so engaged and so focused on discovering what God has for me today that I will not miss any opportunity. At the end of the week, we'd be better students, better parents. We'd be better with our finances. We say, what is my purpose for my finances this week? It is not to spend it all. In fact, I'm going to try to save some. And at the end of the week, we say, how'd you do? Well, I was very intentional. I ate out. I ate out less. I cooked more food at home. I learned to save some money, right? Whatever it was. So write down your purpose and then begin to live it out. And then really ask those questions. What makes me cry? What makes me sing? And what do I dream about? And that'll help you to begin to discover. And this takes a while. This is a process, right? This is discovery. Some of our people that ride on the bikes, I don't think they necessarily enjoy riding their bikes so much. It's not like we enjoy our butts hurting for a whole week. We enjoy making an impact in somebody's life. And the why is not just to ride our bikes. The why is to build wells. In East Africa last year, over 60,000 people. Well, most people were home at COVID, afraid to go out. Our team and you guys were helping us raise money to build wells in East Africa this year. Raise money to build wells in the Navajo Nation, to build wells in Africa, to buy vehicles for Convoy of Hope. Like, we're not going to just sit around. And we're not going to do something just because, ride our bikes just because it's fun. We have purpose to it, right? We're saying we're going to make a difference with what is in front of us. And every year, we come together and we say, what can we do? Whether it's Bike for Light, missions, Feed One, Convoy of Hope. In fact, the whole month of November, I'm going to have, almost every single week, we're going to highlight a ministry that we support or that we should support. And I'm going to encourage you and say, hey, maybe this is one of those things that makes you cry, and you need to really pray about and think about how you can impact and use your life for this. So the whole month of November is going to be about us saying, how can we make an impact in our world? How can we make a difference with what God's put in our hands? So this week, write down your purpose, and then every day pull it out before you leave. Maybe like Jesus in the morning, you say, all right, God, this is the purpose I think I'm supposed to have, but what do you want me to have? And today, would you tap me on the shoulder whenever I'm missing it? Maybe you're at the grocery store, and instead of being frustrated with the cashier, he taps you and says, hey, this person, they're about to get divorced. They're contemplating suicide. Right now is not the best time to yell at them. You'd be like, okay. Thank you for your service today. Man, and what's your name? I would love to pray for you. Is there anything I pray about? Who knows what God would do in that moment? You come alongside him and say, hey, you got this. Don't give up. Keep going. And you ask God and you seek his purposes, he'll begin to do it. But just imagine with me, if we all did this in 1 week, what would our city look like? Would it be better or would it be worse? If it's going to be worse, don't do it, because that's a bad purpose, right? But it's going to be better. Let's go for it. Let's chase it and say, all right, this week I'm going to be so focused, adding value, so focused on my purpose that you're calling me to, that we're going to make a difference. Awesome. Hey, do me a favor. Would you close your eyes and bow your head today? I would love to pray for us. God, we are so grateful for this opportunity for us to gather today to celebrate 7 years as a church, and we're so honored that we can do this these last 7 years. And Lord, we look back over the 7 years and we see an impact that has already happened. And Father, we are grateful for that, but we believe for even more, God, moving forward. God, I thank you for the work that you're doing in the lives of those that are here today, those that are watching online, in their marriages, in their finances, in their mental health, emotional health, that you're doing something in their lives to help them better. Help us to be a life-giving church. Help us to always remember to use our gifts, our talents, our opportunities, Father God, our assignments to impact people. And God, we exist, Lord God, to reach people, so help us to do that and continue to lead our life. We love you, God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you do me a favor? Would you keep your eyes closed and your head bowed? If you're in the room or you watch online, and the greatest value I can add to your life is to get you to a point where you can say, all right, God, I'm living for myself. I'm off track, but today I would like to give you my life. Maybe like the disciples, Jesus is inviting you, says, come and follow me, and I'll make you a person that adds value to others. And today you're ready to maybe take that on and commit your life to following him. And if that's you, I'd love to lead you in a prayer. Not going to call you to the front, but just right there in your seat. If that's you, would you do me a favor? Just lift your hand and say, that's me today. God, I'm off track. I want your help. Awesome. I see a few hands. Anybody else? It's me today, God. I want to get on track. I want to follow your lead. So good. A few hands went up. And if you're online, you're watching, and you'd like to pray this with me, I'd love to lead you in a prayer. So for you that raise your hand, pray this prayer with me. And if you're in this room and you're a Jesus follower, would you pray with us so that they're not praying alone? Say this today. Say, Father God, today I commit my life to you. I want to follow your lead. I want to live your purposes for my life. Help me to hear your voice. Help me to follow you. Forgive me of my sins, of my mistakes, for getting off track. Today, I choose to follow you. Thank you for sending Jesus to die on that cross to give us an example of how to live. I confess him as Lord of my life. And I believe he rose from the grave. And because of that, I could have new life. I could have a new start. So I put my trust in you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Come on, church, let's celebrate those that pray that prayer. So good. If you pray that prayer, before you leave, fill out a connection card, let us know. Or online, you can fill out a connection card, let us know you prayed a prayer. I'd love to send you resources to help you just continue to take those steps. We want you to continue to move forward. Find a small group to be a part of. Some have filled up. There's still some room in some. Begin to grow and use your life to make an impact, all right? Awesome. Hey, we're going to end our service off with an opportunity for us to give together in the offering and give through worship and our singing. And so if you're a guest, please feel no pressure to give. Thanks for being with us. But if you're part of the Grove, this is our time to give. And let me just say, over the last 7 years, we have seen over 900 people come to Christ, which is awesome, right? That's 7 years, 900 people. That's pretty cool. And 104 of those people have taken that next step in water baptism. That's one of my favorite numbers. That's new life. That's new people saying, I'm all in. I'm following him. And so if you've never taken that step, water baptism is the next step you could take in following Christ. And we've seen that over 7 years. And imagine what we can do the next 7 years if we would be focused, be intentional with our life and with our giving and all that. And so just thank you guys for being generous. Your involvement, your generosity, it teaches us and shows us how fast we can move, how much things we can say yes to. And so this last year, we've said yes to a lot of things because of your faithfulness. And so thank you for being faithful and thank you for being an impact. We love you guys. And let's end our service off with the one song. Would you stand with us? On the way out, get some treats. Make sure you get a shirt. And we're glad you guys came today. Have a great Sunday. God bless.
I give you my attention, my focus, pushing out the limits in this moment. I feel your spirit moving all around me. Come and have your way. I'm looking at the